Well guys, after 20 months of building and 8 update videos, the Star Destroyer is finally done. I can't believe it. And just warning you guys right now, this video is probably going to be really long, but there is some amazing stuff coming up later in this video that you're definitely not going to want to miss out on. But without further ado guys, let's take a look at the completed Star Destroyer. Years ago, LEGO released a UCS Star Destroyer. The minute I saw this set, I thought to myself, I can make a custom Star Destroyer that would look way better for way less than $700. This is what sparked a project that has been going on for over a year now. Little did I know I'd be spending $1,700 on this Star Destroyer, which is only $1,000 more than the UCS one. But I must say it was definitely worth it, because this thing is freaking massive, coming in at 63 inches long,
perfect length,
38.5 inches wide, and 24 inches tall. It looks far more accurate than the UCS one. I also got a ton of inspiration to make this MOC from the guys over at Brick Vault who made their own custom Star Destroyer MOC that you can buy the instructions for. Their MOC is pretty cool, but I decided to take it to the next level by making ours 17 inches longer than theirs. This has been easily the most painful, stressful, time-consuming, but also the most epic thing I have ever attempted to build out of Lego bricks. And I built it all by myself. Just kidding, I actually had a ton of help from my two amazing buddies, Josh and Matthew. So a huge thank you to them for making this thing actually happen. All right, now without further ado, I'm going to dive in to all of the amazing details of this Star Destroyer and break down everything for you guys, even down to the tiniest bit of greebling. All right, guys, let's get into it. So like I said before, guys, this thing took about a year and a half to complete. Then again, we weren't working on this thing for that total time of a year and a half. We took breaks here and there. You know, of course, we had school and other stuff like that going on. And also this thing collapsed about halfway into the building process. So we had to start from scratch and rebuild the entire frame. So there were a lot of setbacks, but in total, with all of those gaps and setbacks and everything like that, it took a year and a half to finally complete this thing. And I must say, even though it's been a year and a half since we started building this thing, the end result is 100% worth it. Just look at this thing. It is so freaking massive. So I'm just gonna start right up at the front, just going over all of the details. So the front right here, we've got a lot of greebling. A lot of this greebling is pretty much random. We did look at a lot of pictures from the movies and the models from the movies and stuff like that. And in those models, it does pretty much just look like random pipes and all these tubes and mechanical stuff with all of the greebling. So we kind of just did our best job to kind of randomly put details that would look accurate to the actual thing, and I think we did a pretty darn good job. And a lot of these greebling pieces I used just for my collection, and then I also had to make a couple Bricklink orders for specific greebling pieces, like especially these like pipe and bar pieces and stuff like that, especially these really long ones, which really give it a nice look when you're looking at it from a distance. And then I just wanted to give you guys a look at the greebling from the opposite side as well. Some of these bits right here are some of my favorite, with these like 2x8 bricks with sort of the lip on the end. We had a lot of fun building those, especially just a lot of really cool details. And there's also a really fun Easter egg. We added a Millennium Falcon cockpit right there for part of the greebling, so that's just a funny little Easter egg there. But yeah, that's all of the detail and greebling on the sides. It looks pretty random, but when you look at it from a distance, it just makes all of the sides of the Star Destroyer just really pop with that extra depth of the detail there. We built the Star Destroyer with a total of 4 sections of plating on each side, so 8 sections of plating total for the whole thing. So the top of the Star Destroyer is divided into 2 parts. So this entire front section up to about where the laser cannons are is one section of plating that comes off separately. So there's 2 sections up here at the front, and then the other section back here. So it cuts off right about here, and then this is the rest of it. I just figured that it would be easier to take on and off, especially since it's a super long piece of plating. Then I would just divide it into 2 sections so it's a little bit easier to move around and wouldn't, you know, fall apart and bend all over the place. And then same thing with the bottom plates. There are 4 sections total on the bottom. It cuts off right about here. There's a little gap right here that you can kind of see where it cuts off. But then we once again divided it into front plates, back plates, and I made the bottom plates so that they're attached permanently, but you can detach them if you really want to, and I might have to end up doing that when I'm taking it to LEGO conventions, just in case something goes wrong. Because I made the Star Destroyer so that most of the parts can come off separately, and even the base can come off from the actual interior of the Star Destroyer. So it's a little bit easier to move through doorways and stuff like that, but if you take the base off and just set this down, then the bottom plates are gonna cave in and they're all gonna break apart and it's gonna be a huge mess. But hopefully I don't have to end up taking the bottom plates off while transporting it, because that would be kind of a nightmare. But while we're down here, let's take a quick look at the base stand here. This is actually the 3rd thing that I worked on for the Star Destroyer. The first thing that we actually built was the bridge, just because it was pretty much separated from the rest of the Star Destroyer. So it was kind of a nice starting point. And then second thing we built was the original frame of the Star Destroyer, and then this was the 3rd thing that we built because we needed to have the frame to stand up on something. But I think it looks pretty elegant, especially just with the 2 posts standing up. But I think the thinness and the sleekness just looks super nice. It's almost like the Star Destroyer is just floating there. And for the overall look of the Star Destroyer, we wanted to go with a good mix of tiles and studs. So I think we accomplished that pretty well, because we wanted to make it so from a distance you would think that it's an actual model from the movies, but then as you slowly get closer you can see the Lego studs. So I think we did a pretty good job of mixing studs and tiles and other random details. There's various parts throughout the plating where there's sort of little raised sections, like in the front here there's sort of this raised panel, and then also right here it's raised up 2 plates thick right there, and then also as we come back here there's another little section. It's raised up a little bit, as well as on the other side, and then also back here by the turrets there's another little raised section right here. But if you look at an actual Star Destroyer, there's a lot of like 1x1 specks of detailing on the plating, and sort of just what looks like a lot of plates just mashed together. So I think that especially with the tiles that we used sort of oriented in the different directions, it gives off sort of that industrial look of a Star Destroyer. And then working ourselves up here to the super center, or this sort of layered section that leads up to the bridge. This was the last thing that we actually worked on the Star Destroyer, which first going into it, I thought it was going to be a huge thing to tackle, and I thought it was going to take a really long time, but it actually came together pretty smoothly. We found these Technic connector pieces that actually had the exact angle that we needed to accomplish this look for Super Center. So that was really nice, and then we kind of just built off a Technic frame from there for this base layer right here. This is all just one piece, and then there's another layer, which is this layer on the top. I'll show you guys that a little bit later. I'll take the entire Star Destroyer apart so you can kind of see how it all comes together and exactly how I'm going to transport this for conventions. But pretty much all of it is modular. The bridge comes off, and then this part right here on top comes off, and then this second part comes off, and then this front part is its own separate little thing right here, and it's actually the only part that actually studs in from this entire Super Center, which is kind of funny. And then these turrets on either side also come off. They sort of just slide into place there as well. And as you can see, there's just a ton of greebling detailing around the entire Super Center, which looks super nice. I'm really happy with how it turned out. I was actually running out of greebling pieces towards the end, and I really didn't want to have to make another Bricklink order, especially just for a couple of greebling pieces. That would have been really annoying, but especially around the back here. This was the part that I didn't have finished in the last update video, but we kind of were scrounging around for pieces for the greebling, but I think it turned out pretty well, or as good as it could have turned out without making another bricklink order. So I think that looks pretty darn good, especially with the pieces that we still had left. At the front of the Star Destroyer, there's this weird little notch or little nub sort of sticking out from the rest of the Super Center. This is accurate to the actual Star Destroyer, and this actually took us about 2 tries to get it exactly perfect. The first try, there was still a little bit of a gap between this little part and the rest of the plating, so then we tried to fill it in with some other plates on the sides and stuff like that until it fit flush with the rest of it. And then also these plates on top of this front section right here, these actually aren't studded in either. They sort of just rest into place, and we decided to do that so that we would have the least amount of space between these 2 plates so that there would be almost no gap. That was our main goal with the Star Destroyer, because in the UCS Star Destroyer, there's about a 1/4 inch gap, or maybe a little bit less than that, going through the entire Star Destroyer, which just looks super ugly, and was one of the main things that we wanted to fix from that model into ours. So as you can see, like, I mean, the front plates and everything, there is very little gap, I think as little as we could have gotten it down to. And then also throughout the Super Center here, there's pretty much no gap, especially up here between the 2 plates. So that was one thing that we really wanted to do, and I think that we did a pretty good job. Also, this part up here that's sort of angled and leads to the next section of the Super Center right here. In the middle, like, this entire thing is supposed to be flush, but we tried lots of different ways to, you know, fill in this gap right here, and, you know, lots of different pieces, lots of different little builds to try and get that angle exactly perfect. And this was what we landed at. I think this is the best that we could have done. It's just a really weird angle right here to fill that gap, and even if we moved both of these sections like a half a stud or even a full stud this way, then there'd still be a tiny little gap at the top, and it's just really annoying. But I think what we got right here just works really well, and it sort of just looks like another piece of greebling from a distance. So I think that looks pretty good for what we were able to accomplish. And then we couldn't forget the laser cannons on each side. There are a total of 4 on each side, so 8 total. And these little guys actually rotate. They're just on a jumper plate, so they can rotate a little bit. There's a little bit of friction, so you kind of have to move it with a little bit of force, but they do move around, so that's pretty cool. I actually sort of copied the design from Brick Vault for their turrets because they looked really cool, but I modified it a little bit, especially down here with these wedge pieces or wedge tiles. In the Brick Vault version, these are rounded off, but I thought that the cornered off looks way better. And also some of the part usages I'm sure aren't exactly the same as they used because I was just looking off pictures, but I tried to get the overall design as close to theirs as possible because it looks the most accurate in Lego form, and I think it turned out really, really well. And then of course up here at the top of the Star Destroyer we have the bridge, or the main command center, and this took me 9 attempts to build to the right size, and it was also destroyed a couple times accidentally, just knocked off the table. So it took me a total of 9 times to rebuild this thing, because the first time I built it, it was a little bit too tall, looked a little bit too fat at the top, and then I redesigned it to make it a little bit slimmer, and then I found out that the dimensions were just too small, and the bridge just looked way too small when put with the rest of the Star Destroyer and the frame and all of that. So then I added a couple more studs on either side to the bridge, and then it still looked a little bit too small, so then I ended up making it 4 studs wider on each side of the bridge, and then it finally looked proportionally correct to the rest of the Star Destroyer. Some people think that I should have made the bridge a little bit bigger, but I think that overall with the rest of the proportions, it looks pretty good. And I guess as good as we were gonna get to making it 100% accurate to what you see in the movie. But once again, I rebuilt this thing 9 times, so I really didn't wanna rebuild it or even touch it ever again because I was just getting really frustrated with it. But I think it turned out pretty darn good. And then we used these 4x4 dome pieces on each side right there, and then also the lightsaber pieces as well on each side to sort of hold those up. And then this little radar dish. And actually in the movies, sometimes you see this thing folded up, and then other times you see it folded down. We sort of went for the Empire Strikes Back look, where you see most of the Star Destroyers with the radar dish sort of down like that. And so I just used these 1x1 clip pieces, which sort of gave a really cool look at the front, just like that, and it looked pretty accurate. And then it took a lot of tweaking to get the right, hinge pieces on each side, and then of course being able to connect it right here in the middle, and of course make the gap from each of these plates from the bridge come together nicely. So that was a really big challenge to build as well, but I think the final result looks pretty darn good. Once you get to this part of the Star Destroyer, you notice that it transitions from studs on top to studs on the side. And so we used a lot of these bricks right here just to build up. And actually originally we wanted it to literally just be from here on, just so we could get these little details right here that are actually accurate to the real Star Destroyer. But when we were building the engines and everything like that, this overhang right here from all of the different plates that sort of make this diamond shape, they didn't really overlap as much as we wanted it to. So we had to add a solid 3 layers of bricks on each one of these sections to make it overlap enough so that the back engines just looked super great. So that's just a little thing that we had to sort of edit towards the end of the build. It was sort of a last minute thing, and I didn't even think I was going to have enough light gray bricks to even finish it, but I ended up being able to scrounge up enough of those bricks to finish all these. You can see that I used a lot of 1x1 and 1x2s down here because that was pretty much all I had towards the end of this build, because we just used up pretty much all of the pieces. And then taking a closer look at the back engines here, this was also a lot of detail and a lot of work to do, especially since these plates are at a really weird angle, and it was quite a challenge to figure out how to do that. We ended up using a lot of Technic lift arms and different Technic pieces to sort of get that angle right there. And if you guys don't know, I'm not a big fan of Technic pieces, but I think the overall look of the engines looks super good, especially these 3 main engines. And then we also got the 4, 2 on each side, the smaller engines right there as well. And then there were a lot of pieces that actually look exactly like the different pieces on the models for the Star Destroyer, especially this piece right here. If you look at a picture of one of the models from the movies, it literally looks like that exact piece in Lego, so that's really cool. And then it's the same piece up here as well. And then even these little hinge pieces with the grill pieces as well, those literally look exactly the same on the models for the movies. And then I'm not really sure how this happened, but these 2 plates in the middle, they're not aligned super well, so we sort of just figured out the best way to fill that gap. Because what's really weird is this only happened with the bottom plates. I don't know why it was just the bottom plates and not the top plates as well, but the gap from the front starts out there's literally almost no gap. It looks like the top of the Star Destroyer. And then as you get closer to the back, sort of towards this back post right here, the gap just starts to get bigger and bigger. So there's almost like a 1/4 inch gap right there. So not really sure how that happened or why it happened, but I guess it still ended up working out. And then we just had to, fill in this gap right here. But I think it worked out pretty well. Still, I'm not sure why that happened, but we made it work. And yeah, there's just a lot of other miscellaneous details. An especially cool one is these sort of 4 stripes on either side, which look pretty cool. That's one of my favorite parts of the engines as well. But yeah, I think we did a pretty good job of recreating the look of the engines from the Star Destroyer. And then one idea that I thought we could do for the convention maybe is either adding those like transparent blue dishes to the inside of the engines, either that or add blue light bricks to the inside, or something like that, or even both. That would look really cool, but I'm not sure yet if I want to sort of give off the look that this is like a model from the movies, or actually, you know, make the engine thrusts and stuff like that and add lights to it. But if I were to add lights, this would probably be the only area that I would add it, just for the engines, because that would be super epic. But let me know what you guys think about adding light bricks to this, or what you think about light bricks in general down in the comments below. But that's something I've been thinking about for a little bit, especially for conventions coming up and stuff like that. And I also wanted to show you guys a look at the bottom plates here, especially with the hangar. This is definitely one of my favorite parts of the entire Star Destroyer, and it was super hard to build this thing, and it also probably wasn't super smart to try and start building the hangar after I attached the bottom plates, because I started building the hangar right after I attached the bottom plates, and I really didn't feel like taking them off again because I was tweaking with the angles and everything. So I kind of felt like a car mechanic, you know, working on the underside of the hangar and stuff like that. But I think that this turned out super well, especially with the weird angles of the bottom plates and stuff like that. And then I'm not really sure what this bit right here is, but apparently it's accurate to the actual Star Destroyer. You see it in one scene in like Empire Strikes Back or something like that. And then I also have a squad of 3 TIE fighters right there that are ready to be launched into battle. Also, I made a miniature Tantive 4 that fits perfectly in here. So let me grab that real quick and I'll show you how exactly that fits in. Okay, so here is the mini Tantive 4 that I built. And if I can just get a good angle under here, I can show you how this fits up in here. It's a little bit of a tight squeeze, but it does fit all the way in here, just like that. It's not a very strong connection, but it literally fits perfect, so you can recreate that scene from A New Hope. And then also, if you want to display the Tantive 4 just sort of like flying outside of the Star Destroyer, I built this clear rod piece right here. And then if you just attach that to the Tantive 4 like that, then you can clip it onto one of these bars here on the inside of the hangar, just like that. And then you can just have it fly right underneath the Star Destroyer, so that's really cool too. So there's 2 different ways that you can display the Tantive 4 with it, which is pretty cool. And that reminds me, I actually built a ton of these miniature starfighters and TIE fighters, X-Wings, and even the Millennium Falcon and Slave 1 made it in there. So yeah, I built all of these ships. It's not a ton, but I think this is a good number. If I would have made more than this, it kind of just would have taken over the whole aesthetic of the Star Destroyer being there. So I didn't want to add too many starships and make it too busy on the top of the Star Destroyer, but I think this is a good number of ships. And without further ado, let me put all of these ships on there in the diorama, and I'll show you what it looks like when they're all on there. So here is the completed diorama. As you can see, we've got 4 TIE fighters. We got 2 normal TIE fighters, and then we also have Darth Vader's TIE Advanced, as well as a TIE Interceptor. So some different variations of different TIE vehicles. And then we have the Lambda class shuttle, otherwise known as the Emperor shuttle, right there flying off on the end. We've got this TIE fighter in the front shooting at this explosion right here, which was a ship at one point. So I made this little ball of explosion with a 1x1 brick with studs on all of the sides, and I put all of those transparent orange and red dish pieces all around it with some fire coming out of it. So I think that turned out pretty well. And then we've got our X-Wing, our A-Wing, and our Y-Wing over here attacking towards the TIE fighters. So I think that turned out pretty well. Also, just a disclaimer, I copied a lot of these designs for these miniature ships from other people's YouTube videos and Instagram posts and stuff like that, because I'm just not super great with designing small little intricate detailed ships like that, but I did tweak some of these to make them my own and sort of just accommodated them with the pieces that I had available in my collection. So that is that. I think this turned out pretty darn well for this diorama up here in the front. And then also around the back side here, we have a little chase between the Slave One and the Millennium Falcon here, so that's pretty cool. You know, I got the Slave One firing at the Falcon down here, and so I thought that that would be a really cool scene to show around the Star Destroyer as well. So there's that. And then also at the bottom here, I have even smaller ships down here. I was sort of debating whether or not I should have like these super tiny ships on the top of the Star Destroyer or the bigger ones, but I decided to go with the larger scale ones just because they're a lot more detailed, and I guess the Star Destroyer is just so big that, I mean, they'll look small either way, but these ones will just look like super tiny, which these are probably a little bit more accurate proportionally to the Star Destroyer, but I just figured that I would add this down here just because I thought these were really cool, especially the X-Wing there. I made this with 4 white Lego hands, but yeah, so that was a really cool design that I saw somebody make on Instagram, so I was like, why not? I'll add that. And then this TIE Fighter, it's just a pretty simple build, but it's shooting there at the X-Wing, and then we have a tiny little Imperial shuttle there at the top. So that's just a fun little thing that I thought I would add at the bottom of the Star Destroyer. But yeah, that is it for the whole diorama that I have on the top of the Star Destroyer. So for this part of the video, I'm going to be taking apart the Star Destroyer section by section just to show you guys how exactly we built it so it can come apart modularly. And I decided to do this at the end of the video just because I'm probably going to be keeping the Star Destroyer just apart for now until I take it to this LEGO convention, which is July 24th and 25th. So I'm probably just going to keep it like that just so it doesn't take up as much space in my basement and so that it's all ready to be transported to the convention. So without further ado, I'm going to start taking everything apart. So as you can see, I took everything off of the Star Destroyer and kind of looks like a mess right now, but as you can see, we got all of the top plating right here on the ground. So like I said before, it comes apart in 4 different sections, the 2 front sections and then the 2 back sections. So that's how that all looks taken apart. And literally all of it just slots into place. Nothing is really studded in. And I can sort of show you how I was able to do that. So if you look at the underside of one of these plates, I just had these Technic lift arm pieces right here. These like 1x5 pieces. And those just sit in exactly the right distance away so that when you put both of the plates on, then it matches up perfectly and there's literally no gap between each of the plates. So that's how I was able to do that without them studding in, and so it's a lot easier to take them off so that I can transport it easier. So that's how that sort of works. And then we have the bridge right here, which just slides into place. I can sort of show you how that works, but we can just take the bridge over here, and there's this tall sort of post looking thing right here, and it just slides in right here just like that. And of course all the other plates and stuff would be on here as well, so it would have those to rest on. So it's a little bit more sturdy once you have all of the other plates on as well. And then we have all of the parts of the super center. So down here on the floor, this is the base part, which is super huge. And like I said before, these are like the Technic lift arm pieces that are the exact angle that I needed it to be at. So that was really fortunate. And then we sort of just built off a Technic frame from there. And then this is the second layer of the super center. So there's technically 2 layers in it, because you got this bottom one right here and then this one on top. And this one turned out super well. I love how seamless this gap is right here. So that turned out super well. And then all the greebling and stuff. And then this is the front part of the super center right here. And like I said before, these plates right here on top just sort of slot in, and that's just how we were able to make that work. But with all the weird angles and stuff of especially this front part, we just figured it would be a lot easier just to make these slot in and not actually stud in. So that's how we were able to make that work. And then of course we have all of the miniature ships that I went over before when I put them all on top of the Star Destroyer for the diorama battle. So we have all of those there as well. But yeah, this is what the Star Destroyer looks like with everything taken off. Looks pretty barren and everything, but you can sort of get a better look at how I was able to attach the bottom plates. I used these little builds right here. So we have some Technic lift arms right there attached to the sides of the Star Destroyer, and then I built out these like plate looking things, and I made them big enough so that there was enough surface area so that it would actually, you know, stay on and actually stay attached. And then in the center, I really didn't have to do a whole lot to keep it in place, but I used a couple of these ball joints right here to support the middle part of each plate, and then also I had some in the back, but that's pretty much all I needed to keep it in place. And then also the sensor dish at the bottom does a pretty good job of keeping the plates in place as well. So that's an added feature to the sensor dish as well, I guess. It just keeps them in place, so that's really nice. And then as you can see, the posts from the base of the Star Destroyer come up into the center, and this is how I made them able to be detached from the actual frame of the Star Destroyer right here. So I just have a couple of these pins that you can just take out, and then you can just slide the entire Star Destroyer up, and you can handle it however you want. But it does kind of suck to reattach, because you gotta line up all of these pins on this front one and then also on the back one. So that's kind of a little tedious, but I might have to end up doing that when I'm actually transporting it to the convention. And then over here you can also see a better look of how we were able to create the angles for the back of the Star Destroyer with the engines and everything like that. So we used a lot of these Technic pieces to achieve a lot of those angles back here. But yeah, overall, I used a lot of really sketchy building techniques, so if I was a Lego designer, they would definitely fire me. So yeah, that is going to be it for the in-depth part of the Star Destroyer, so let's go ahead and close it out. Alright guys, I hope you enjoyed the Star Destroyer finale video. As always, thank you so much for watching this video, and also thank you so much for 100 subscribers. I'm so excited to finally see my channel growing and can't wait to see it grow even more in the future. And also thank you if you're watching to this point in the video. You stuck through 40 some minutes or however long this is right now. If this is your first Star Destroyer video that you're watching, or if you're completely new to my channel, please consider hitting that subscribe button. It really helps me out. and I will see you all in the next video. Peace out.